Welcome to Expats on Air. This is a show where expats get together online and converse. We got two very special guests today. Black Pigeon Speaks, aka Felix Rex, and his buddy Marvin Motz. And you cannot see their faces. They are hiding their faces today. But would you guys like to introduce yourselves a little more?
Marvin, do you want to go first?
Sure, okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Am I mute on? Okay, good. Yeah, I'm a expat. I'm a refugee from America. I'm a refugee from K Street. I had a law firm there. I believe in the system. I was extremely happy. Made good money. Loved my job, and I saw things getting very rotten. As a lawyer, I could see the details of how it got rotten. So I escaped to Japan. I'm living on a small island now, and I'm pursuing resilience living and helping other people follow. And right now I'm in Osaka in a small restaurant. I just happened to be here when the time came up. So I'll put myself on mute.
Okay.
I should say that K Street, for those that aren't familiar with what Marvin said, that he's a refugee from K Street. K Street is literally where, since the 1990s, pretty much 100% of legislation, bills, and then laws are passed in the United States. They're pretty much all written on K Street by lobbyists and the lawyers that work in those lobby groups. So just to put Marvin's introduction into play. Myself, I as well am an expat. I live I'm not in Osaka. I'm in Tokyo. I've lived in Indonesia. I've lived in Thailand, in Istanbul, all across Europe. And I've lived in Egypt and a few other places. And I basically have been, I guess, a traveling vagabond since I finished university. And I have a couple of degrees. I don't want to get too specific because I have a lot of people that dislike me for the political positions I take, which I don't think are very radical. They're positions on things like self-reliance and things such as, being able to articulate unmentionable truths in our society, breaking taboos, as it were, on things like, let's say, gender. And I now currently reside in Tokyo, in central Tokyo. And my name is Felix, by the way.
And yeah, here's his channel, Black Pigeon Speaks. And you have another channel, Felix Rex.
Felix Rex. You can see that this one's lost about 20,000. This one's lost about 10,000. My channels are being absolutely suppressed by YouTube. And if you actually take a look at the content, none of it's radical. There'll be things on, why Washington actually works the way it does. And that was actually when I was bringing up Marvin's work on K Street. I actually made an entire video on K Street. And these sorts of videos where you talk about the reality of things within our society, they're verboten for the most part. So, like, for example, on the screen right now, woke debt slavery. It talks about how our monetary system works. The next one is Our Time. It talks about the evolution of AI. And the last one is the enigma of consciousness. And these are not particularly, I would say, inflammatory ideas, but they do challenge the current narrative. And this is why people such as myself, there's other people as well. I know of at least a dozen content creators that are, since the run up to the November election, are being horrifically suppressed. But anyway.
So you're not banned from YouTube yet. Are you on Trovo yet, though?
am on Trovo. The only problem is I was just on D Live and had finally built up a decent audience up until our friend Baked Alaska destroyed the entire platform for everybody. And now I'm on Trovo, but I think I have only about 130 subscribers. So if anybody would like to find me there, it's Felix Rex on Trovo. All one word, Felix Rex with no space.
Now, Marvin, if you want to unmute yourself, you called yourself a refugee. Why would you describe yourself as an American going to Japan, a refugee? Oh well.
Maybe we lost Marvin, but I could probably answer that for him. Oh, there he is.
Here.
Okay, can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry.
We got you.
These are broad concepts that can merit long conversations and discussions in themselves. I'll make it short. Here's two things. One, my grandparents left Poland to go to America because the land was free and was almost free. It was very cheap. They didn't like it was very constricted living over there. I left America. I come to Japan. The land is extremely cheap. Agricultural land is actually nothing. If you want to own it to give to your children, you have to pay for it. But other than that, you can get land for just a promise to use it here. Beautiful land. I've got land I actually paid for on the ocean, 4 or 5 acres. There's more personal freedom here. I mentioned K Street. I was a patent lawyer there, and I watched the globalists destroy the American inventors' rights, and piece by piece, and like, oh my God, is this really happening? The Japanese have more inventors' rights. The Germans have more inventor rights. American inventors, as well as the people in the finance industry, it's all taken over by globalists. And this is the refuge. It's all over. America is I think I've had these conversations over the last 5 or so years. A lot of really intelligent people in America are ready to leave. They want to leave. They all have dreaming about going to Honduras or, Costa Rica and so on.
Yeah, a lot of retirement fantasies in some of those places.
Yeah, unfortunately, most of the chatter, most of the blogs and so on, the chatter that I encounter are retirees, and unfortunately, there's not enough young people wanting to do that. There was a guy from Greece where I'm at. I have a lot of young people coming, and they want to immigrate here. I had a guy from Greece, a young engineer. We actually found him a job. He's in the process of moving here on a good visa when the military grabbed him because he knows how to repair jet airplanes, and they want to have a war with Turkey. Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's not that they want to have a war with Turkey. It's that Turkey wants to have a war with all of their neighbors, I think is the better description on that.
Oh, yeah. The other Americans I talk to here seem to all have the same perspective. We know what's going on, and we're really glad to be out of there. I know other Americans that have left here. There's a good friend now who's farming. I just talked to him this morning. He left probably 5 years ago. This is a land of opportunity. I mentioned personal freedom. I won't get into details. I won't get myself in trouble. But you can do things here that get you thrown in jail in America. Personal freedom things.
I can actually attest to that. There is absolutely a lot more personal freedom over here than there is in North America. I'll absolutely.
Americans don't believe it.
Yeah, I'll back that up. I'll back that up.
A lot of things can get you thrown in prison in Japan, right? Smoking a joint, right? That could get you.
Well, smoking a joint, yeah. Drugs are a no-go, but I mean, you can drink yourself morning, noon, and night. The point is yeah, things like marijuana, but there are no speech curtailments. Even, for example, like if you come into contact with police officers, it's actually one of the most interesting things I've ever seen in my life. This guy, when I was walking down the street one time, he was screaming at the police and he had a knife, and they all brought out this gigantic, the only way I can explain it is a blanket, and they just wrapped him up in it like as a pig in a blanket, and they were all laughing at him as he was screaming. Nobody got shot, nobody got killed. They just kind of ran at him and they rolled him up in a blanket, this gigantic, I don't know how else to explain it, but even if you're an idiot and you're attacking police officers, you won't get shot. You
I
won't get killed.
actually have a lot of experience with the police in Japan. So I was a teenager when I lived there, and my dad used to work there in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I was a teenager. I'd buy like fireworks at 7-Eleven and set them off on the street, and we get chased by the police all the time. But they're always very nice. They'd take like a name and an address and a phone number and let us go, and that was that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Japan is like, I would also say the same thing about places like Thailand. Is you also, so long as you don't speak ill of the king or do drugs, you have a lot more personal freedom in places in Asia. So like the one caveat is if you don't do drugs, which I think I can deal with, and you don't speak ill of the monarchy. A lot of the Asia Pacific region, you generally have a lot more personal freedom than you would in a place like America, Canada, or Australia, or wherever your audience is listening from. There is a lot more personal freedom in Asia Pacific, so long as the caveats are drugs, obviously, you just stay away from them entirely. And if there's a monarchy or particular cultural taboos against authority, if you stay away from those, I mean, you're good as gold.
Cool. So I got a question I want to ask both of you. So if you were to describe Japan to a foreigner, somebody who's never been, but I don't want you to do the cliche, hey, look at the toilets, they're amazing. Like, how about something that's a little more unique from your own personal experience that kind of exemplifies Japan? Do you think you could explain from your own point of view?
You want to go first, Marvin?
Why don't you go first, Felix, and then
Okay, I'll go first. Japan is I mean, it's an ancient society, and they haven't really changed as much as people think they have via industrialization. They are still a society that's based on cultural and social harmony. And one thing is, as much as I love the place, and no matter how well you speak the language, you will never be one of them. And I think that's the same for pretty much any Asian society. Places like Westerners have this idea: is you move to a place for 5 years, oh, you're American, oh, you're Canadian, oh, you're Australian. Asian people don't have that. And another thing is that very interesting is that, I guess, like, thinking about like my family and my friends back home, is they don't really make a lot of distinctions between Koreans, Chinese, Japanese, Taiwanese, etc. But they are so different from each other that they constitute different civilizations, pretty much. And they don't readily get along either. They, for the most part, detest each other. Like within the Asia Pacific region, I think the only large, the Japanese have friends in Taiwan. Taiwan, would be a friendly nation, and then South Asia, so the Vietnamese, the Cambodians, and the Thais. But their next two neighbors, the Koreans on either side of the peninsula, the north or the south, and the Chinese, constitute mortal enemies that I don't think will ever be resolved for 1,000 years. Actually, this place, Northeast Asia, is the most militarized place on the planet. More goes into GDP, and there's more military, there's more bombs, there's more planes, there's more tanks than anywhere in the world, which a lot of people find hard to believe, but it's actually true. And the Koreans hate the Japanese, the Koreans hate the Chinese, the Koreans hate the North Koreans, the Chinese hate the Japanese. They all are groups of people that despise each other. Now, having said all of that, the societies themselves are among, I would say, the most, when you're in them, among the most civilized and harmonious in the world. Now, I'm not including mainland China in that, because the mainland Chinese suffered under the cultural revolution, excuse me. But I would probably include the Taiwanese, the Koreans. I've never been to North Korea, and the Japanese, among the most civilized peoples on the planet. They don't resolve issues on the street of, hey, did you look at my girlfriend? Let's have a fight. They don't have this sort of impetus toward violence, petty crime. They don't have impetus toward drunken fights, and thievery. That's another thing. So you can have these gorgeous vending machines that serve hot coffee out in the middle of nowhere, and nobody's going to vandalize it for the quarters that are inside of it. So the way I describe where I am, I would not only describe Japan, but Northeast Asia as a place, a bastion of civilization and civilized behavior the way we would like it to be, or the way it used to be in our countries prior to the 1960s. Does that sort of help? Was that a good?
Definitely helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, and that whole thing about the militarization, that's not something you hear very often. That's a good point. Marvin, any other things you want to add?
When I came here, I was a scientist and was employed in the middle of a large corporation, and it was very Victorian. The rules, everything was very hierarchical. Well, it was hierarchical in that big corporation people were adored and little corporation people looked down on. I was very sensitive to that. The languages is very, very different between different classes of people, like Victorian England, and that really struck me. And you can see how they're kind of built, because someone gets into trouble, they're in serious. Well, I'm always interested in why it is, but when you do something unacceptable here, it's not you, it's everyone involved with you that gets into trouble. So I studied this in law school as well. When there's a problem, the police will kick it back to the community and say, you guys have a problem, and if you don't solve it, you're all in trouble. So it's extremely social. I guess the main thing I would add to what Felix said is the extreme sociableness. When you die, whether you go to heaven or not is not determined by your personal private decisions. It's determined by how your group felt about you. Were you good enough to them? When women decide to have sex or not on a date, it's not determined by the restriction on that. The pressure against having sex is not come from a feeling of morality or God or anything. It's all about what will other people think. It's a very different way of organizing things. And even now, like the laws, in America, laws are law, but in Japan, they're just used as tools. If you do what people need and want, and you care about them, you can get away with stuff. That's why we have a lot of personal freedom here, because if you mean well, if you're not hurting someone, so what?
Now,
I've had this conversation.
I'd like to add to that.
Yeah.
That's actually very much the case. So long as you're not infringing upon anybody else, you can pretty much do whatever you like. The one thing is that there is the community, and the community, if you are creating, I guess, unharmonious activities, or you're unbalancing the community, or you're unbalancing you will get a dressing down, from somebody within the community. One thing I would have to say that in places like, central Tokyo, it doesn't even matter anymore, because central Tokyo is like, I live in,
it's a foreign place.
It is. I mean, like, for where I live right now, the convenience stores are literally entirely staffed by Nepalese, and I don't even know, like, I do know my neighbors, but they won't even talk to me, even when they go out and, like, they've got this what is the name of the dog that Churchill had? What are those ugly fucking things? What are they called? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to swear.
Pug?
Not a pug. It's not a pug. It's it's the Churchill dog, the British dog, the dog Bulldog? Of Britain. What are those things called? They're ugly as anything. They're like a pug, but they're anyway. My next door neighbor has one of those. She's an anime. She's actually a famous anime artist, and every time I say hi to her, she's just like, hello, and then she just runs away with her dog to take her dog to do his business, a few times a day. And we've been living next door to each other for years. So Tokyo is is absolutely not a good example of what Japan is about. Tokyo is it's not dysfunctional. I mean, you don't see any sort of petty crime or anything, but people aren't friendly here as they would be, I think, where Marvin lives. So I just wanted to make that caveat.
Okay. So I lived in Tokyo in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I've been back a number of times. I'd say it hasn't really changed that much, except a couple things. Well, you mentioned, Felix, the foreigners in the convenience stores, like Nepalese or Indonesian. That wasn't happening like 20 years ago. And then those smartphones. Yeah. But I don't think it's really changed that much.
I was going to add to what Felix said. It really becomes clear to you. I was in the big city for years, and I'm in the tiny countryside. And it's interesting that people in the countryside, even though they normally would hate each other, and sometimes they do, they get together and they rely on each other, and they become friends whether they like it or not. It's really weird. We have community cleanup. On Saturdays, we all come out for 3 hours and clean up the common road or whatever. And I see people that I know hate each other, but we end up relying on each other. We have community newsletters where each one passes on the letter to the next. One of the guys down the street has a shotgun. The police come by and talk to his neighbors. Is this guy, is he suicidal, and so on? There's a lot of interactions that between people that normally wouldn't, in the big city, they would have nothing to do with each other. But just because they're the only people around, I mean, when you go down the street, if you meet someone, you always stop and talk to them. I think maybe it's just more like maybe the rural Japan is similar to rural America of 50 years ago. Andy of Mayberry.
But you're talking about the Andy Griffith Show, right?
Yeah, Andy Griffith Show. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of my favorite shows of all time. Ron Howard from Happy Days actually got his start on there, and he actually directed, I think, the last Star Wars movie, Han Solo. Just to put that out there, and I would agree with that. I think that cities are intrinsically anti-human, and I've absolutely come to understand that while living in a city so Tokyo proper, I think, is about 13 or 14 million. But if you actually look at the metro area where you combine the entire metropolitan area of Kanagawa, Saitama, Chiba, and Tokyo, where the city actually lives, it's about 40 million people, which is more people than Canada, more people than Australia, it's more people than a lot of European countries. It's not, and about the same as California, because California is just completely overpopulated. But one of the things I've realized is that cities on the level of let's say more than 50,000 are intrinsically anti-human. But I mean, that's completely off topic. Just something I thought I would throw in there.
I think Marvin's battery died. He dropped off, but I think we can just keep going.
All right, that's fine. He was in a cafe. He's actually getting a visa to go over to China to talk to them about his as he was saying, he was a scientist and then a patent lawyer, and now he's into circuitry, and he was actually getting a visa at the consulate in Osaka to go over and present his ideas and his inventions. So anyway, Marvin, into the ether you go. It was great. But anyway, we'll talk soon.
He seems like a very interesting guy. Maybe he'll get back on. I'll keep my eye out. But I wanted to talk to him.
He's got an olive farm on an inland island in Japan. I mean, he's incredibly interesting. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
A bunch. I got to talk to him about the Congo. So this show, I just started it, and I mostly lived in China as an expat, so most of my connections are China related. So this is the first time I'm branching out to another Asian country, but I thought we'd get into Africa this time. It's all good though. So Felix,
I have to be. I've only ever been to North Africa. I've never been to
yeah.
Sub-Saharan, so I can't help you out there at all. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all good. So you lived in
Yeah.
Turkey. You mentioned that they always want to fight their neighbors. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, it's interesting. When I lived in Turkey, was at the beginning of the current president. His name is Recep. So their C is a J sound in English, so it looks like Recep, but it's Recep Erdogan. And it's very interesting. So, like Turkey, when I was there, Turkey was the Islamic country. So okay, I have to go back in time a little bit, and I'm going to do this as quickly as possible. At the end of the First World War, like not all, but many of the great dynastic monarchies were destroyed. The Austro-Hungarian Empire fell. The Russian monarchy fell, the czars, and also the Ottoman Empire fell. It was basically the elimination of a lot of the large empires that had dominated the Eurasian continent for, let's say, I don't know, 500 years. And the man that took control of Turkey at the end of the Ottoman Empire, his name was Mustafa Kemal, and he ended up garnering the name Ataturk, and Ataturk means father of the Turks. And it's interesting because he was born in Greece, but Greece at the time was part of the Ottoman Empire. I'm not going to get into his sexuality or his philandering, but he was a person that understood that if Turks remained part of the Middle East, they would be pretty much relegated to what, and they have no oil. They'd be relegated to what the Iranians or the Pakistanis are. He completely changed the entirety of the society. So hijabs, the head covering for women, were banned, and the fez, the sort of like little what Shriners wear in the United States. My granddad was a Shriner and a Mason, and they wear these little fez hats. They were abolished. You weren't allowed to wear them. And he also changed the Turkish language from being written in Arabic script to Roman script or Latin script. And he pretty much set the country on a course of secularism. The oldest and most grand church on the planet is the St. Sophia Church, and it was built around 300 AD, and it still exists. And he turned that, so when Constantinople, which was basically the end of the Roman Empire, fell in 1453. So a lot of people, because of Catholic understanding of the Roman Empire and the fall of Roman Empire, people believe it fell in 400s. It didn't. It fell about 1,000 years later in Constantinople. And so from that point, from 1453 up until 19, I guess maybe 20, they converted it into a mosque. He converted it into a museum. What's happened over the last 15 years or so is that there is an Islamist president who has pretty much thrown shade and tried to reverse all of the secular changes to the country that Ataturk did about a century ago, and reform the country on Islamic terms. So that church I was just talking about has been reconverted into a mosque. So it was a church for 1,000 years. It was converted into a mosque for about 500. It was a museum for about 90, and it's been reconverted into a mosque. Turkey right now is belligerent because it sees itself. So what is happening right now is that certain societies are absolutely rejecting the Western model of nation state. So like you can be a Pakistani, show up in California, and in 5 years you get your citizenship. Yes, I am American. I am just as American as you, who has lived here for 500 years. That is the concept of the nation state. And I didn't do that accent. I was just trying to articulate what I was trying to say. But there are certain countries right now, India, China, and Turkey is one of them, that are working on what are called civilization states. They are trying to what's called reconstitute their understanding of themselves as a society based on their civilization rather than being a nation state. They are civilizational states. And the current president, Erdogan, is attempting to reconstitute Turkey along those lines. And in doing so, it's necessary for him to become, let's say, I don't want to say rambunctious. He's being absolutely I'm trying to think of my words here carefully. He's trying to reconstitute what was the Ottoman Empire. So what you do see is he's drilling for gas in what are territorial Greek waters. He's earning the rapture of NATO, of the EU. He's going over in the recent Azerbaijan versus Armenian war. He's helping out the Muslims in Azerbaijan with drones that basically annihilated the Armenian forces. He's working. So, for example, before he arrived on the scene, Turkey was the only Muslim Middle Eastern ally that Israel had. And he's completely thrown that under the bus. Israel's now the enemy. He's upturned everything in order to reconstitute, I would say, a neo-Ottoman Empire. Sorry, that's a really convoluted and long answer to your question, but
it's all good.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
Marvin is back, by the way. I think he's got to untap the mute. Hey, Felix, when did you move to Japan?
Well, the first time I ever came to Japan was in the late 90s with actually with my dad. He had business interests here. Moving here, I came about 10 years ago, but then I left for a number of years, and I came back again about, I don't know, five years ago, about something like that.
Cool. Are you able to talk about what you do for work or anything like that over there?
Not really, because one of the problems with our current society, I would have no problem prior to, let's say, Obama, but the problem is what we have is called cancel culture. And the fact that I don't generally ascribe to all aspects of the current meta narrative that is propounded by big tech, the mainstream media, and finance that owns them all. I'm pretty much at the whim of people trying to find me, dox me, and make me unemployable. And that's a very unfortunate evolution of our society, but it is something that we are living in.
Yeah.
So I all I'll say is that I work. Anyway, I do work. I don't work with people. Let's say that. I don't work with people. So
is it better being in Japan from this point of view? I mean, if you were in,
it's a lot better. It's a lot better because I don't worry about people ever coming to my door and knocking on it. And I don't worry about losing banking privileges, or I actually, even the word using that privilege. I have a friend of mine, and I'm not even lying to you. I was living in London in 2019. So like this whole COVID has just thrown time into the ether. But I lived in London for about 6 months in 2019, and I met this girl, and she's on the internet. Probably a lot of your followers will know her. I'm not going to name her, but she was, I guess she described herself as a burlesque dancer. So she did, like, let's say, sexy dance, but not completely nude. Well, sometimes, but she did it as an art form. Does that make sense? Like, she's not like with a pole and guys throwing dollars at her.
But really classy, like a really
classy. It's called burlesque. Is what she. Yes. Anyway, she came out as a Trump supporter. She was from New York City, and she's gorgeous, beautiful, like these, just glass green eyes, black hair, She's I believe she's from Serbia. Well, her family was from there, but she's like American. And because she came out as a Trump supporter, she not only basically couldn't work anymore in New York, she lost her bank, Chase Manhattan. She lost all of her friends, and her entire basically life fell apart. So she moved to London to get away from it, because her entire life fell apart because of, well, I think that lower taxes are a good idea, and I don't think Hillary Clinton is a good person. And her entire life was to the point where she wasn't even able to have banking services in New York City as a burlesque dancer, to put this into perspective. So this is kind of why here in Japan I don't feel the same anxiety I think that people would feel, in, let's say, New York, if that makes any difference.
So she could have kept her mouth shut politically, opened a really raunchy OnlyFans account, and she would have no problem.
And she made millions. She's gorgeous. I mean, I'm not going to say who she is, but there are pictures of her topless and bottomless on the internet, and my good God, she's the one. She's the vision of beauty.
Should we put her up on screen?
She's a vision of beauty.
No, we shouldn't put her up on screen. You don't want to mention her name. I think I know who you're talking about, though.
Yeah, but I don't want to mention her name. Her name.
Fair enough. Cool. And hey, Marvin, when did you move over to Japan? What year was that?
Well, I moved here permanently about 3 to 4 years ago. Before that, I spent a few years part-time rebuilding an old warehouse on the waterfront. I lived here in the bubble period. I came over as a scientist for 4 years at a Takeda, a large chemical company.
What year was that, Marvin?
And I went back. Oh, that was 88 to 92.
Okay.
And I think, so the bubble was just getting over. At that time, everyone here was crazy that they were number one, and I was thinking, you guys are nuts. You're crazy. You're out of touch with it. Nowadays, they think they're number zero. It's the opposite. People here have no confidence in their country. It's such a strange thing to see.
I would agree. I think they even call it the Galapagos. Like, as far as I understand, a lot of the Japanese call their country now the Galapagos Islands, the sort of forgotten, just this land that the world has forgotten about. Yeah.
Yet everybody loves
and them. Their attitudes towards China was interesting, because back then at the bubble period cooled off, and America was falling, and the Japanese people actually started to love China. It was very, very interesting, because they were looking up to America. Then they stopped and they realized America wasn't worth looking up to. I'm talking about the early 90s. They started looking up to China. I really thought that they wanted to emulate China, and then China treated them really bad.
Yeah, China's not the Chinese. The problem with the Japanese is that they are hemmed in by millennia old nemesis, right? Like, and there's no way. This is the thing about, for example, people joke if you go to the UK, the smelly French and the surrender monkey cheese, or the sauerkraut, or there's this sort of like jovial talk about ancient nemesis in Europe, but the anger and the rage in Northeast Asia is absolutely real. So one of the things that I would suggest on this that's very interesting is the Japanese have been covertly understanding the retreat of American power. They understand that America is collapsing. They understand they cannot count on America. So they've been building up. They've got actually the second largest blue water navy in the world. And the funny part is that all of the new fighter jets, I think it's the F-35, because the F-22 they won't sell outside of the United States, and I think both of them are actually piles of shit as far as I understand, avionics wise. But anyway, the point is that the F-35 can do a vertical landing. The Japanese have been building what are called, quote, helicopter aircraft carriers, closed quote, right? They understand that they're going to have to deal with these problems themselves in the future. And the Japanese have built up pretty much the second largest blue water navy on the planet under the auspices of Article 9 in their constitution, which prohibits any sort of offensive weaponry. But the thing is that all the weaponry that they're building right now can, within like 90 days, be shifted over into offensive weaponry. So they're building aircraft carriers in Yang. Anyway, sorry.
I was going to say they changed about 5 years ago. It seemed to me they started all these advertisements teaching young people how it's great to be part of the military. And
you go into the subway. You go into the subways. There's all those military advertisements to join. They're everywhere.
And in China, they're doing the same thing.
How emasculating does that feel if you're a nation and you're totally dependent on another country militarily? You're not allowed to have an army or a navy, but you gotta depend on Big Brother USA. That can't be good psychologically for like men in a country.
It's not good, but I think they understand that the period of the Pax Americana is dwindling into the sunset. They understand that the Pax Americana is countries generally. If you look at like Glubb or you look at Spengler, where he talks about the seasons of a civilization, Glubb talks about the ending of civilization. America is passing into its twilight at the moment, and the Japanese, at least as I can tell in their military spending and what they're spending military on, they are understanding that America is passing into its twilight and will no longer be there as a force in East Asia, and they're going to have to be a porcupine, as it were. You know, the whole, like the Swiss doctrine of the porcupine. You know, you are armed to the teeth, and it will be way too much hassle for any adversary to overtake your population centers or your territory. So it is emasculating, but I think at least insofar as the people that control the country, they understand that the Pax Americana is coming to an end.
That's a good point about porcupine. I hadn't thought of that. I've been going a lot to China the last couple of years, and I'm surprised by how much there's a military feeling. You know, the few times I turned the television on, I was kind of shocked by it. It seems like military shouting and band playing, and when I talk to people there, it's really clear how strongly patriotic they are, and they're getting more and more so. I was attending meetings with people, scientists from all over the world. We were all hosted by the Chinese, and we were talking amongst ourselves. They're going to do this for about 2 years, and then it was about 2 years ago, and then they're going to stop, and then it's going to be, foreigners going to be devils again. Right now they need us, but as soon as they get everything they want from us.
Yeah, I can speak to that a bit. The patriotism and all that, because I used to teach for 4 years in China. I was in a city called Nanchang in Jiangxi province.
Where is Nanchang? Is that north, south, east, west?
Jiangxi,
I'm not exactly sure where that is.
South central China.
Okay.
So it's Jiangxi province.
South central. They have the Crips. They had their version of the Crips and the Bloods. I'm just joking. Sorry about that.
It's rough. Actually, there's a funny story. It's a rough place, and when the Japanese invaded, the Chinese would call them Ruben Guiza. It's like Japanese devils. But there were these guys in Nanchang who dressed up like Japanese soldiers, and they would go raid villages in the province and, just take, plunder, rape, do what the Japanese soldiers did, and just, do it for themselves, essentially. So they called them Nanchang Guiza, like Nanchang devils. So, yeah, it was a little rough. It had its rough patches. But there were a lot of students, like young men, who were pretty fired up about China's military and the prospects of war. And they used to do these little sessions, like every month the administrators of the school would get all the guys together. They'd separate the guys from the girls, and they'd show them these videos of like all the latest military tech and kind of get them fired up about China being a powerful, military country.
Well, that's the thing. One of the things I've understood about the Chinese, they're very clever at, is that any sort of problem that the country does have is what they will do is they'll reorganize that energy toward venting it against foreign entities, as it were. So for example, like if the one thing about the Chinese that's really, it goes back 1,000 years, is that China is not as, I guess, sturdy as people believe it is. It's the difference between what's called the coast and the interior. And that's why Mao's Great March started in the interior and led itself out to the coast, is that the coastal regions of China is not like Japan, and it's not like Korea. The Japanese are like, when they describe themselves, and I think both of you who've lived here, the Japanese describe, we Japanese think A, B, and C. We Japanese X, Y, and Z, right? And whereas the Chinese are like, the Japanese are, and the Koreans are very, how would you say, their insularness creates an idea of community that doesn't exist with the Chinese. The Chinese are very much me and my family against everybody else.
Well, so on the surface, though, they do that we Chinese thing. They say our Chinese. They say, well,
on the surface they do.
Yeah, but I would say, it's a very, you're looking after you and your clan. I would say that's
exactly. That's exactly the Chinese. So
when you get deeper,
all I was trying to say is that the Chinese, they basically have this oscillation of the interior versus the coastal regions. And this happened, one of the largest wars in all of human history that nobody has ever heard of happened in the 19th century. It had almost the equivalency of deaths between the Second World War and the First World War. I think it was something along the lines of about 35 million people. So it wasn't as much as the Second World War, but it was more than the First World War. And it was promulgated by a guy who described himself as the brother of Jesus Christ reincarnated. And it was a war that went on for about 25 years. And this is why the Chinese are so adamant. So, for example, on their social credit score, any sort of adherence toward what they call a cult will be, you will be just thrown into a dungeon. And this is why they will not allow Catholicism, any sort of Christianity to...
that explains that. That really explains a lot.
Yeah.
So I've always wondered why they're so crazy about, cults and religion.
Well, because they suffered one of the largest wars in human history, and the death toll was catastrophic, and nobody's even ever heard of it. So they have a long memory, the Chinese. So like we have these cycles of 4-year elections. Oh, I want Obama, or I want I don't know, Trump. These guys work in generational cycles. So and they have a very, very long memory. And this is why they don't tolerate foreign influence, foreign ideas, because unfortunately they've suffered and tens of millions of deaths based on what they perceive as foreign ideas within their society. So
isn't one of their cycles taking over Taiwan?
Well, I honestly think that they're going to, with Biden as president. I think they're going to have to. The 100th anniversary, not the 100th anniversary of the Communist Revolution, but the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party in China is this year. And they've made overtones. They've made overtones that part of this anniversary will be the reclamation of China back into Taiwan back into the motherland. So,
which is a special date.
It is a very, and Chinese are very auspicious on dates, as you probably both well know.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been talking way too long. You guys,
please.
Well,
you are the guest, Felix.
Fascinated.
Yeah, I would say they're probably going to take it in the next 5 to 10 years, if not sooner.
Think about what they did. They took Hong Kong. Everyone's like, oh, this is terrible. This is terrible. And then COVID comes around and everyone's fucking forgotten. Sorry, I didn't mean to swear. I apologize. Everybody's forgotten about Hong Kong. Hong Kong's gone. It's done. It's finished. And I think I saw in the news the other day something along the lines of, I can't remember the number. I think it was either between 20, it was under 100, but it was over 20, probably around 50 of Hong Kong's most prominent democracy advocates were all like thrown into jail a couple days ago.
Well, I agree with you about Taiwan. I think they're going to be attacked and taken over within, soon. Probably within around 6 months or less, I think.
Because Biden will not. He will not support them. Trump would have, and that's the Chinese are like sitting there licking their lips and clasping in their hands and giggling. Stupid Americans! Look at what you've done. We get Taiwan back. And I'm not saying that in a parody of Chinese people, because I love Taiwan. It's heartbreaking because Taiwan is actually what China should be.
Should be and could be.
Taiwan is an example of what China could be and should be, but is not. I mean, China could be a beacon on this planet of Taiwan is one of the most I think one of the best countries I've ever been to. Their people are lovely, their culture is amazing, and the idea of them being subsumed by the communist mainland is heartbreaking, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, Taiwan.
It really is.
It's like a really good mix of the best parts of China, the best parts of Japan, all kind of mixed together in one little island.
It really is. It really, really is. And it's such a jewel. And the fact that the Chinese are going to basically try to snuff it out. I hate the fact that Taiwan, whenever it goes to any sort of sporting event, they always have to carry the Olympic flag, and they call themselves, they can't be Taiwan. They're called Chinese Taipei. Okay, here's something that's very interesting. I don't know if you guys know this, but before Nixon went to China, and I believe that was in 1972, Taiwan held the Security Council seat for China.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and after Nixon went to China, everyone basically threw Taiwan under the bus. Yeah, they did. So, I mean...
Well, Chiang Kai-shek, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Chiang Kai-shek believed that Taiwan was the real China, and the mainland was part of Taiwan. And he refused to he was
right.
Yeah.
He's right.
He would not compromise on that.
And Chiang Kai-shek was right.
He didn't want an independent country.
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's changed a lot now, where there's one side of the country that's, hey, we are the Republic of China. The other side that's, no, we are Taiwan. We are, its own country.
Well, it's been so long. Sorry, go ahead, Marvin. You go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt again. In the 1980s, I worked with a bunch of Taiwanese scientists in America and got to know them pretty well. We used to talk about Taiwan a lot. I also knew Taiwanese who actually were really mainlanders who went to Taiwan. And I learned there's a huge disparity. The Taiwan people have been suffering under the mainlanders for thousands of years. Every time there's a problem in the mainland, the losers come to Taiwan and declare themselves sovereign over them. It's been going on forever. So the real Taiwanese people have always been there, and they've always been dominated by guys. Chiang Kai-shek is not a Taiwanese guy.
No, Taiwan is the Chinese Okinawa, as far as I can tell. Correct? Would you not agree?
I'd say
it's kind of the Chinese Okinawa, because the Okinawans are not Japanese either, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, they got their own minority groups, their own languages, cultures. That's very different from the minority groups in the mainland, too, for that matter.
Yeah.
We saw in World War II time that when one big thing happens, the other countries see a time opportunity to do their thing. If Taiwan suddenly were invaded tomorrow, you're going to see a lot of other things happening in America and in Europe at the same time to take advantage of the chaos. Do you think?
Well, I think America, to be honest, as an experiment, it basically signed its death warrant with the Hart-Celler Act in 1965, when E pluribus unum. Well, that was when they changed the Immigration Act, where anyone can come, right? So the idea was that E pluribus unum, from many become one, which is actually still on I think it's the dollar bill. The idea that you come to America, you shed. So I think it was Teddy Roosevelt said that you come to America and you shed whatever it is what you were, and you become American. The idea is that, whatever you were before, that's done. You come to America, you become American. And after 1965, they changed. It's called the Hart-Celler Act, and that was when they changed the immigration ideas, where most 90% of 90% of America at the time, 92% were of European extraction, and I think 7% were African American and 1% of others. Once they changed that and then said everyone can come and nobody has to integrate, we all become a multicultural tapestry, that's when America died. I mean, it literally died. Look at what it is today. You can arrive from wherever it is and you just join your community. And for example, there are people that are born in Los Angeles and they grow to maturity and they can't speak English because they're subsumed in a Spanish speaking place. I'm not saying these are bad people. What I'm saying is that this is not a way for any sort of society to govern itself if you want to have any sort of longevity. So, yeah, I don't really think that America has much of a future, to tell you the truth. And I don't think any Western society that basically lives along these particular lines, where you can show up and you don't have to even learn the language, integrate, or even be part of the community. But, you get voting rights and you get whatever largesse the political class will throw at you. I don't really think that a society like that has any sort of longevity in front of it. Well, I could be wrong.
I agree with you. No, I agree with you. America has no future. And the more interesting question to me at this point is, what's the next thing in terms of human civilization? I see an evolution continuously occurring here. I think we can build a better society. And,
I agree.
We've generated. What was the meaning? Looking back, what did America do anyway? It created it explored and created all this great technology. I think it's time to just settle
America
back.
Put a man on the goddamn moon before the Hart-Celler Act, and America chose to literally put in 50 Marshall Plans into the rest of the world via foreign aid. And what has it gotten? Nothing, just more mouths to feed. I mean, it's a Malthusian trap. But the problem is that America has taken an emotional stance on geopolitical realities rather than a rational stance. And this is, I didn't mean to cut you off, Marvin, but I would 100%
you did
agree
not
with
cut
you.
Me off.
I 100% agree with you.
Well, that kind of prompts the question of what is a nation state? Was the nation state a viable entity going forward? I would argue it. Well, you mentioned before there's like you're talking about Erdogan, in Turkey, there's something that goes beyond the nation state itself. There's a culture or maybe a religion or something.
They're literally calling it the civilization state. So it's Russia, Pakistan, state. India, China, Turkey. A number of different countries are refuting the idea of the nation state as constituted by Western people for the last 100 years or more than that. And they're literally going back to what they believe is their civilizational state. And the best examples of that are Russia, China, Pakistan, India, and Turkey. Japan could do it if they wanted to in a second, if they wanted to, but they haven't. But it's basically it's a new iteration of geopolitical, I guess, flag waving. Is that we are not
where you're going with this? Yeah.
They are not part of the geopolitical order of the Western dominated world, and we have our civilization, and our civilization constitutes our nation rather than the other way around, right? And the best examples of it, as I said, are Turkey with Erdogan, how he's reforming basically a neo-Ottoman empire, the Chinese, obviously, Russia under Putin, and Putin is actually, as far as I understand, he might have Parkinson's, he might be leaving, but the Russians are doing the same, and the Japanese could do it at any point if they wanted to. So it's a rejection.
That's important. The Japanese could do it at any point.
Yeah, they could at any point they wanted to. At any point,
if they did that, they would go back to an Edo period. You combine that with technology, that's it. That's the future.
Yeah,
small, independent, geographically isolated areas working for themselves, becoming self-reliant, self-resilient, developing very complex cultures, which is what Japan had, recycling everything. And to me, that's the best future we can hope for.
I agree. I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. The Japanese, the one thing that people have, they have this idea that you just have to keep like shooting out more babies in order to make GDP grow. No, you really don't. Especially living here, when you go to a sushi restaurant and a robot meets you and you punch it and he gives you your ticket and tells you where to sit. Excuse me. I would agree with you. I think that the Japanese, because they're under, I guess 75 years of American empire, are still kind of, they've got one foot on, one plank and a foot on another plank. As I told you about their military buildup, 90 days to shift over their entire blue water navy. Their navy, if things didn't go nuclear, for example, like with ICBMs or something, if it went toe to toe with the Chinese Navy, the Japanese Navy would sink the Chinese Navy in a day. Oh. I mean, they have over a century of naval expertise, and now with their blue water,
they've done it too.
Yeah, their blue water navy. I mean, the Chinese are still a brown water navy. They're trying to put their toe into the blue water, but they're still a brown water navy. And
getting back to this idea of civilization development.
Yeah,
Japan has always evolved in face of a challenge based on foreign ideas. And what I see now, we were talking about this before, yesterday perhaps, or the other day. The foreigners, what I see in Japan now is they're looking to us foreigners for good ideas what to do. I am just amazed. And
can you elaborate? I don't mean to interrupt you, Marvin, because that was actually a very interesting conversation we had the other day, and I think the viewers might be interested in you elaborating on that conversation. Well, because I
starting out with my observation.
Conversation.
My observation when I was
exactly. Sorry, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. My observation when in the late 80s, the Japanese hired me as a scientist, and they brought me into the middle level of this one of the biggest chemical company at the time, R&D labs, and they said, "Look, do your thing. Americans are best in research. Don't worry, argue, disagree with your boss as much as you want. We're gonna learn from you. We're gonna watch you." So I had all this freedom, right?
So you were like the Mr.
And even now,
for scientists.
Yeah. Well, they told me, they were at the time they were sending lots of their scientists to American universities to see not only, well, they're trying to steal ideas. They actually tell me. The guys would come up to me and say, "Tell me, how do I take ideas, to this lab I'm going to go visit, for the next couple years in Harvard, that kind of conversations we had." But now there's a big problem with COVID. They're worried about the economy going down. My town has like 9,000 people, and we're scattered around a bunch of islands. There's only like 0.2% of us are foreigners, but we're getting all the COVID money. I got $20,000.
Yeah, exactly. I would like you to tell.
I got $20,000 worth of yen because I have an idea, and I'm not afraid. I'm building a deck on the beach, like a nice Hawaii Hawaii beach party kind of deck. No one would ever possibly do that. But I don't care. Like, who owns the beach? I don't give a damn. I think I own it. And if they don't like it, that's too bad. It's like, so I'm building out this stuff, and they're giving me this money to build out stuff, knowing that I'm going to do it. Because they want people to come there to visit. And if they were to give that money to a Japanese person, they've never, step outside.
Marvin,
the
tell them about the
box.
conversation yesterday. Like, there's a 70s like rock guy and a bunch of people that are also New Zealand people. They're all getting money from the local government.
That's right. There's
tell
a 76 rock guy, somewhat famous musician who located there, and they gave him $5,000 to buy amplifiers. So he promised the town he's going to invite rock bands to come out. And there's a New Zealand guy who came out on a big catamaran, and now he's living there with his kids. And he's getting $20,000 worth of yen to build out stuff to bring tourists in. And there's another person from New Zealand who's got around, I think, $20,000 to build up another tourist attraction. That's what they're doing.
I got a friend of mine. I don't mean
to
interrupt. I just want to interject really quickly. I got a friend of mine who's trying to make a dating app, and he got like $20,000 from the government as well. Sorry, that's all I had to say. Please.
Oh,
continue.
really?
Yeah, please continue.
Well, what's a good example of a successful business? Was it SoftBank? There's a Korean guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the richest guys is someone from Korea. Was it? I forget his name.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Anyway, after the war, they went to America to see what the Americans were doing, and they had Deming come over and teach them, Japanese products are despised because they don't work, they're cheap and crappy, and they brought the best guy they could find, Deming, over, and they humbly listened to him and treated him well, and they copied exactly what he said, and created the Deming Prize, and had all these companies skill up or improve their quality of their products to become number one. The Japanese, I think, at heart are extremely humble, and they America, we have a religion of creativity. I have a new thought, therefore I'm great. Japan, it's not like that.
I love that. Can you repeat that? A religion of creativity.
A religion. We have a creativity religion.
That is actually. I'm gonna put that on a T-shirt.
Yeah,
that's. I'm gonna steal that. To tell you the truth, the religion of creativity. I'm gonna steal that and put it on a T-shirt. Sorry, go ahead.
You take that and you make it more interesting and more palatable, because I can't do that, but I observe as intellectual property lawyer. I started out as a scientist and inventor in the 1980s and became a patent attorney, and then worked with. I've been in intellectual property, my adult life, 30 years, and I see this. I worked at a large corporation in America, in the middle, inventing and publishing research papers, and then I moved to Japan. Same size company, the same kind of work, the same everything, and had a very interesting comparison. The Japanese people are just as creative, just as actually smarter, I think.
I would agree. I would agree. The Japanese,
because no one cares about creativity.
The Japanese, though, they have a very interesting outlet. They have one of the things I've noticed about them, and this is actually probably can't even talk about this on your podcast, but there are let's say demographic differences in groups of humans, where Japanese will become absolutely obsessed with one thing. So I've got a guy, he's obsessed with organs, so he's built a $100,000 studio within his $100,000 house in order to play his music. And for example, there's a television show where here in Japan where all they have to do is play, I think, they'll start with 3 notes and then go to 4 notes and then 5 notes of train stations. So when a train is arriving, dun, 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 dun. Like a lot of train stations have, for example, like here in Tokyo on the Yamanote line, they all have a different song when a train's coming, like
Yeah, that is so cool.
and there's a television show where you know they'll give them 3 notes and like, okay, that is the train station in wherever Japan, you know, like let's say it's in wherever Arkansas, you know, to put it into perspective.
I think
and they become obsessed with that sort of thing, you know. So
yeah. Well, I had two kinds of conversations. One of them was, as a scientist, I'm doing my experiments, and people are shaking their heads at me. And I remember one time I had a real successful experiment. I figured I proved myself wrong. My hypothesis was wrong. I told my boss about it. He got real upset. So why'd you do that? I said, well, I proved myself wrong. He says, but another thing, they used to always tell me, you know, Americans will find, and the Europeans will find where the basic new technology. They'll put the hills, tell us where the hills are, and our job is we go around and we put in all the points. We work 10 times as hard and figure out all the little details. And the other thing was, Americans would come out with a new product, a new kind of machine, typically in research, you know, something totally different that was very helpful. And our job as Japanese is to take that and actually make it work.
Well, that is what the Japanese are good at. That is, like, you have to admit, I mean, they are a lot better at the details. Like Westerners are good at the ideas, but they're better at the details. I'm sorry. I'm not going to lie.
I think that's a good thing.
The Japanese
that's a good thing.
Are really good at the details.
Well, they love.
But my point is that all the basic technology, all the low hanging fruit, is pretty much been hammered out, and we've got a lot of details left. A lot of the so-called new technology, it's not new at all. It's just details.
I agree.
Americans are not contributing anything.
We're not contributing, but I would say the details, insofar as East Asian people, and a lot of people don't want to admit this, but the problem is that the East Asians are a hell of a lot better at the details. They're really good at the details.
And Felix, your love for those Japanese toilets, that's a great example of just attention to details. You got to get that warm seat, you know.
Well,
that toilet is packed with details, and it gives you those little nice details in your daily life that just make it a lot.
Well, it does. I mean, I'm sorry, it does. I mean, having a warm toilet seat in the middle of winter, and it flushes and it cleans you, so you don't even have to wipe your bum. Sorry, I'm gonna go with the toilet seats.
It moves up and down by itself.
And it moves up and down by itself by motion, you know, open toilet. And
So both of you love Japan, obviously. You admire it a lot, and you're living the good life there, but you know, you're never gonna be Japanese. So how do you feel about that? Like, being in Japan long term, but you're always going to be an outsider.
You want to go first?
It bothered me at first. Yeah, I'll go first. It bothered me at first, but now it doesn't bother me at all. I'm not going to live forever. Who cares? You know, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, I don't care if I'm Japanese or not. I don't want to vote anyway.
The voting part, I don't give a shit about. I don't give a shit about the vote.
She puts down no one. She leaves it blank when she votes as a protest. I probably shouldn't say that on air, but don't. But nowadays, you know, if you're contributing something and they see that you're working hard and you're humble, I feel very accepted. I'm more accepted than the people in town who are lazy. And there are Japanese people
even in Tokyo, I would say the same thing. I'm more accepted because, you know, there's a lot of these, like, you know, antsy neighbors who are like, oh, the gaijin didn't put his garbage out in the absolute right position where I put it at, you know, the tilt. You've always got these weirdo neighbors here. That's one of the things. The Japanese as a race of people are exceptionally autistic. I mean, I'm sorry. I love them to death, but let's be honest. There's a whole cadre of them that are exceptionally autistic. Like, so for example, well, you could put out the garbage at 8 p.m. the night before pickup, and you put it out at 7:55, and you'll get people, wait a minute, that was 5 minutes before. And you'll get like complaints. I get complaints to my building about that sometimes. And just the most ridiculous things, like literally autistic things. But I would say nobody ever disputes the fact that I'm part of the community, contributing, even though my community is like central Tokyo, and nobody's ever aggressive toward me as a minority, because obviously I walk out of the house, I'm a Caucasian, I'm a white man, and I'm taller than everybody else and bigger than everybody else. Nobody ever gets in my way trying to say, well, you don't belong here. That's never happened to me. Well, maybe once or twice.
When I first moved to my small village, I did have that, and I just worked through it by demonstrating that I cared about them, and I was humble and working hard, and they became friends.
Yeah.
What kind of
I remember
trouble
I was
face?
disliked at first, but because they didn't know me. But I feel like well treated. In fact,
so do I. I do too.
About the money. Actually, I think we're treated better.
And also, I remember, you don't have any sort of like aggressive police force, tax force. When any interaction I have with the government is always very cordial. You don't have people overlording you in East Asia. Would you agree with that, Marvin?
You do in China.
Maybe I'm.
You definitely do in China.
I've got this one detractor on Instagram every time. So, for example, I have down the street from where I live. I'm not going to tell you guys where I live, but I live in central Tokyo, which is like 40 million people, but right in the center. And down the road from me is a convenience store. And anyone who's interested in looking at this, you can find it on my Instagram. And there's a bike that's been sitting there for almost a month, and it looks like it's at least, I'd say at least let's say $300 to $500 bike. It's a nice looking bike, and there's no lock on it, nothing. But drunkards, coming home at night, every night, they use the basket in the front as a rubbish bin. So the thing is literally over the front basket is overflowing as a rubbish bin. Because one thing you both probably know is they don't have trash cans in Japan. They don't exist. So if
you put one out, you're in trouble. It will get filled up like that.
Yeah. So but this thing has been out there for a month, and I've been taking photos of it on my Instagram over time. And I've got this one detractor guy. I think he's a Western dude, and he lives here, and he utterly hates Asian people, but he lives here. I figure what he did is he probably got a wife, got her pregnant, had a kid, and then just hated the fact that he's stuck here. So he utterly hates Japan. So I don't delete him. You guys can look at it. His name is Bat Shit or something. I can't remember what it is. And everything that I ever post on my Instagram positive about Asia, he just jumps in on and starts fighting with everybody in the comment sections.
How does he feel about your birds?
He calls them what does he call them? Rats with wings, And to be honest, while I'm talking to you guys, I've got one of my buddies that I got from a shelter. I got two new ones from a shelter recently, and on my air conditioner. And he's not a nice person. Basically, he's not a nice person. But I don't ban people for not being nice people. I let them speak as they like. But yeah, I have a bunch of birds that live with me that are unreleasable in my house. Yeah, that's another thing I do.
They won't survive.
They won't survive outside. Yeah, they will die. Or like they're either physically or so. For example, I took a brother sister combo recently from a shelter in Saitama. It's the only bird shelter in the Kanto area. They were found in a park in a box and then raised by a person and then put into a shelter and then in a cage until they were, I don't know, 8 months or something. They're just not releasable because they've never been wild. They don't know how to. So
how many years do they live?
Well, in wild or in captivity?
In captivity.
Well, they can live up to 15 years in captivity, but generally on the streets, they live between like 0 to about 2 years. So, but in captivity, about 15. So,
Felix,
or like not. I don't consider them captivity. So, for example, I put them in diapers. So I use women's menstrual napkins. Like
how cool is that?
And then I've got a sewing machine where I measure them, and then I sew them a diaper or a nappy for your British viewers.
Can they fly?
And, oh yeah, they fly. They're fly around the house. So my entire apartment is their domain, so they can go anywhere they like, and they don't poo on my floor because I change their nappies at about 6 a.m. and when they get up at about 6 a.m. and then about 3 p.m. I change them, and then
do they look forward to it? Do they hop to you? They don't complain.
Oh yeah. They well, if I have peanuts are the cocaine of birds. They're the cocaine of birds, the catnip of birds. They won't eat walnuts. They won't eat almonds. They won't eat any nut, but peanuts. For some reason, they start shaking and they purr like a cat. Yeah.
So that's associated with the nappy.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. So I'm looking at one of them in the room here, and they choose the room that they dominate as well. So this is my room, and the other ones are like, this is my room, and this is my room, and then whenever they eat, they kind of like, I don't know, butt heads. Anyway, this is not really part of your show, bro.
Well, no, it's cool because I did want to ask you, because your whole persona online, Black Pigeon Speaks, very pigeon centric. Yeah. What inspired you to give it that name, and what makes you want to keep birds in your home and all this stuff? Not to go into too much specifics, but I went to India about a number of years ago, and India is a filthy, dirty, smelly, horrific country, and I recommend nobody listening to this ever go there. And I got bit by, I think it was a rat, and I had an autoimmune reaction in my body that put me in hospital for close to a year in Tokyo. I was lucky enough to get back to Tokyo, and I was in hospital for almost a year. And the only thing I could do was to go out to this little park in front of the hospital and sit there for months and months and months. And there was pigeons there, and I became friends with pigeons. And that's where it all started, to be honest. Almost died. I can see why you don't have high praise for India.
Oh, I absolutely, I recommend nobody going there. Never go there. If you're a woman, especially don't go there, because you're going to get bad things happen to women. But just health wise, if you want to live, don't go to any of those countries, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, none of them. And you might end up like me, literally fighting for your life for a year. And it took me probably close to like 8 years to become semi-normal again, where you could just live a normal life, like not with weird diets, not with weird, which I still have to do, weird diets. I can't eat a lot of protein. Just India is an absolute trash fire. Like it's a dumpster fire. Don't go there is what I would tell anybody. Don't go there. I had this grandiose idea of like how great India was the number one destination for me in my 20s. Like I gotta go to India, and then I get there and it
on the mountaintop.
Yeah, and it almost killed me. Spiritual. It almost killed me. because they're so fucking filthy in that country. So sorry. Anyway, that's the truth.
We're getting into Trovo territory. Might get banned from YouTube after this one with the.
Sorry, is that too
Japanese,
much?
Filthy. No, it's fine. It's fine. And also the bad language.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, literally, just the hygiene there.
Look,
and Japan is the opposite.
Japan is the absolute opposite. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Your opinion.
I'm not trying to like Trovo your show. I'm just saying that.
It's all good. Look, it's your opinion. I'm trying to keep my politics out of this show. But it's all good as long as you don't drop the N-bomb or the CH.
No, I'm not dropping any of that. All I'm saying is that like the unhygienicness of the country literally put me in a hospital for almost a year and has affected my entire life to the point where I have to go to a hospital every 2 months to check my blood and urine for the rest of my life because I went to India. And I'm obviously going to have a bad take on the place because of the unhygienic way they are, the way their country is. And for the rest of my life, every 2 months, I have to get my blood and urine taken. And it's, for the rest of my life, it's been like that. So, I mean, if I have a bad take on India, yeah, maybe perhaps I have not prejudicial because I have. No, but I have Indian friends, but I'm just saying that the place is dangerous, for people's health, and my health has been compromised for the rest of my life for a fucking 3-week trip. Sorry, I didn't mean to use the F word. Sorry, for a 3-week trip in India. My health was compromised for the rest of my life for a 3-week trip to India. So I'm not. It's not.
On the contrary, living in Japan, I think, can extend your life.
Yeah, I agree because the Japanese are literally the most clean people on the planet. I agree. So
Felix, you could swear in this show. This is TVMA. This is
okay.
R-rated.
I don't know. I don't like cursing, but I mean sometimes, to be honest, like talking about my trip to India generally riles me up because I just get really emotional and angry about it. So I apologize.
So, hey, Marvin, since we're talking about developing countries that are a little dangerous, I looked into you a bit, and you done some traveling to the Congo. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that's described in my book. I wrote a book called Take Back the Power, ! I went to Congo recently. The book of this recently. I went to Congo about 2 years ago because I developed a new kind of very low cost, high efficiency electric grid based on natural principles and not big corporate circuits. And I tried to sell it in America, and not everyone turned their nose up at it, except this a guy from the Congo who was he came from the jungle. I mean, his family's all from the jungle region in the Congo, and he goes back every year to put in wells and does fundraising. So I went with him. I got there a week before him. I'd spent a week. I was the only paleface around. This is waiting in Kinshasa, in the slum of the slum. I mean, taxi drivers would refuse to even go there. That's how bad it was. It was extremely interesting. I remember going to downtown. There'd be potholes in the street that literally are 6 foot deep. And
is that true? 6 foot deep?
Oh, absolutely. And I remember trying to take a picture, and people are literally going to kill me if I take a picture. So I don't really have any good pictures of that. But the electrical grid, there's a picture of it in my book. If you go to Amazon.com and just look at the preview, you can probably find the picture in there. There's just random wires on the side of the road at 240 volts, high power. While I was staying in my friend's house, one night I heard an explosion where 2 wires touched each other. They're not even insulated. 2 of his friends died of electrocution one of those days from the wires. But yeah, that was, there's a movie, I don't know the name, where the the last helicopter to leave Vietnam, and how the people were
in the embassy in Saigon. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, living on the main street of Kinshasa felt like that constantly. It's just everyone's frantic. It's just high level of energy. At one point, you might find this interesting. At one point, a bunch of Muslims wearing white robes were processing down the street, and my friends hid me because they knew they could identify me as, probably not Muslim. They hid me. You walk along the street, if you're not careful, you might fall down into the ditch, 3-foot drop. It's just very dangerous. But that was, it's just so anyway, we went to the jungle region, and it was like everywhere I went, it was like one big campground. Imagine living where and it's never too cold, never too hot. Food falls from the sky, from the trees. There's no windows in any buildings because you don't need them. And people just milling about everywhere. I forgot how we got, I don't know what to focus on here, but
I think that we should just give them more money and ask them to move to our countries because they would enrich us entirely. I think they should. I think 1 billion Congolese should move to Tokyo because imagine how
they all wanted me to take them home. They all wanted me to take them home.
How enriched would Tokyo be? That would be a wonderful.
Oh, I know. There's the thing that struck me. This is a learning point for me was why are there so many people? There's no law. There's no tax, no income tax. There's no street signs. Even except for a rare instance, there's really no license plates on cars. Cars are running. All the red lights all the idiot lights are flashing. Nothing's taken care of. But the reason why, if you live in a place like that, you must have children. If you've got lots of children, you have wealth. People watch your back. You've got cousins and, cousins everywhere. You need to have something done. A cousin will help you out and make sure it gets done. That's where the power comes from. I remember having a conversation with a guy there. He had 5 children. He's like 30 or something. He wanted at least 2 more. And I'm telling him out in Japan what it's like. And I think he started to cry. He felt so sad for me. Not realizing that, my health and wealth was not dependent on having lots of children. But I think that's why they need that in a situation where there's no law or order. You rely on your relatives. So my host had 7 brothers, and they took care of me. It was like, it's very dangerous. It's hard to go to Congo because, they tell you not to go basically. But I had 7 brothers took care of me, and they wouldn't let me cross the street without holding hands. That's how close everyone was. And I just had so many little experiences there. And the reason my book is easy to read that people like it is because I described this in the first part of it as my learning about the American corporate system of solar energy. It's like the healthcare industry. It's all based on overbill, selling you stuff you don't need, decreasing efficiency, and jacking up prices beyond belief. And that's, as an aside, I don't want to get too far away, but as an aside, this is why Michael Moore was right in his movie, Planet of Humans. Solar energy cannot solve any problems because it's way too expensive, but that's only because corporations got a hold of it. And that's the point. I wrote a book on this. If you get around the corporate approach, you can drop costs at least 5-fold and so on.
I'm thinking, anyways, Nathan, you're going to be putting his books links in the description, correct?
Yeah, I'd like to pull one up on the screen. The one that involves Congo. What's the name of that book?
Well, that's part of. There's only one book, and that's "Take Back the Power!" Explanation point. Just take back the power! Explanation point. If you read the back cover of that, it puts it all in a nutshell where I'm coming from. But anyway, Congo taught me, a lot of things like that. Out in the jungle, there's absolutely no light. There's no electricity anywhere. The most important thing is lights. The second most important thing is communications by politicians. Cell phones. If you have any money at all, you buy a cell phone, a smartphone. There's no one has money for glasses or for going to a dentist or anything like that.
That's actually kind of interesting because I gave in and bought myself some reading glasses, to tell you the truth. Like honestly, a few days ago. Because
how old are you, or is that confidential?
Pardon
me? How
old
are you? I'm curious. How old are
you? Let's say I'm a child of the. I can't say that, but
okay, anyway. Don't tell me. But my observation is, it's uncanny. Every person that turns 42 has to get glasses.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm getting close. Let's say that, and it's bizarre because I literally went down to Nagoya, and a friend of mine, he was like, well, and he's like 42. Crazily enough, he's like, here, take these. I'm like, wow, I can actually read my cell phone again. It's like
well, I'm so nearsighted, I take my glasses off to read now. I'm so glad I didn't have LASIK eye surgery.
Oh yeah, people were saying the laser thing, and I said to them, yeah, no, I'm not going to put a laser to the cornea of my eye. Absolutely not. I prefer to just have lenses.
Marvin, I wanted to do it, but the legal document they wanted me to sign basically said, well, if we destroy your vision, it's okay.
We're not legally responsible. Yeah. So yeah. My answer to that is like, get the hell out of town. Get the hell out of town. Yeah.
Marvin, jumping back to the Congo, do you remember the brand phones that they would typically have over there?
The only foreigners I saw were Chinese cell phone makers and parts makers. There may have been Samsung, but something tells me that everything was Chinese.
Yeah, I actually I went over to Africa, not the Congo, but I went to Kenya and Nigeria for the company that makes a lot of those phones in Africa. They make like techno phone.
Oh,
like everybody in Nigeria's got a techno phone.
I bet it was those.
Yeah,
I'm sure that's what it was.
Now the Chinese, they have this huge presence over in Africa, but I think there's a bit of a Japanese presence there. Are you guys aware of that at all?
I've heard of that. In fact, because I'm very interested in finding a Japanese company to sponsor me to do stuff over there. Put in electric stuff, and I know that there's some the east side. There's some Japanese companies, Angola, but not in the Congo. There were is all what little there was.
Is the Congo even like? Company. Is it not like? I mean, isn't pretty much most of Central Africa like they're at war with each other and eating each other and like murdering each other and like. I don't mean to be rude, but I mean there's it's called the YNC. .com or hoodsite.com, and they have all of the videos of the Africans and
the northeast corner of the country.
Their predilection.
See, it's so big. It's as big as the eastern half of America. So you've got all these wars going on in Maine, down to Vermont, where millions of people are dying, and then down in Florida or Arkansas, which is where I was. Right. It's pretty peaceful, and even going to the equator, which would be like analogous to Nebraska, going up there had its own passport procedure, and they control who came in and who left very carefully because they didn't want war, I suppose.
Of course they don't. Nobody wants it. I mean, no normal human wants that stuff. I mean,
but it's the northeast part of that country that's where you've got Apple and all these corporations shoveling money in to get their minerals.
Cobalt,
Get the wars there, all these warlords.
There was
it's really horrible.
Show,
yeah,
an Amazon show. Have you seen it called The Widow? It's about a British woman who goes to the Congo to find her dead husband, and they get into a lot of the mineral stuff. Have you guys heard of that?
No, I've not.
Oh.
No, to be honest,
what's it called?
It's called The Widow. It's Kate Beckinsale stars her. It's pretty good. You guys should check it out.
There is a lot of minerals there. There's a guy there wanting me to find a Japanese company to come in and harvest all of the mercury that's floating up on some of the lakes there. I guess there's a lot of mercury there. There's all kinds of minerals. What I found most interesting was all the palm kernels that were littering the forest floor everywhere I went. But those are real valuable, and I suggested to my hosts, well, these children, they're just doing nothing. They're just growing up doing nothing, sitting around. They could be harvesting, gathering palm kernels and making money that way. And it was very interesting to see in his family. One guy was a businessman who's into doing stuff like that. I promised to come back with some nutcrackers for him. And where other people, they just want to beg. No, don't do that. We have to beg for our money. There's a lot of, they're exporting trees. Yeah, they're exporting logs even now to make, one of the more interesting things was we visited the World Wildlife Foundation and UNESCO and one other aid agency, and I learned that they're absolutely doing nothing good. Although everyone's worried about the World Bank coming in, taking over the forest, kicking all the people out, and converting it into a park for the rich people.
Well, I'm not going to.
Real story that's going on.
I don't mean to be rude, but I'm a misanthrope, and I've gone to Thailand, and you pay like $100 to go hang out with a bunch of elephants that have been abused as workers for their entire lives. And I am a misanthrope. I do believe that converting something like that for rich people, because what happens is in these places, they get all this foreign aid, and the cycles of nature doesn't affect them, and they pretty much destroy the entirety of
I agree with you. The group I was working for was using their money to buy up development rights to prevent anyone from developing.
I'm not talking about development. I think that the animals deserve their own space is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Humans shouldn't encroach on everything is all I'm saying. We should not encroach on absolutely every inch of the planet. Anyway, sorry, Nathan.
Well, no, with that in mind, there are way too many people there, and how do you, how should they? Well, they should not be there.
Well, then we stop giving them, we stop feeding them, and then let nature take their course. If they can't feed them,
I was wondering where they get their food. They get mostly rice from outside somehow.
Yeah, no, I mean, if they cannot do for themselves, if they cannot create for themselves, whether through trade or but if their entire existence is a handout, sorry, you're gonna have to figure out another way to exist other than handouts. And I one thing I should probably tell Nathan to you, I'm an animal rights absolutist. I'm a vegetarian. I love animals, and that's why I have like wild, basically broken animals that can't be put out into the, and I let them live in my house. I'm an absolutist in animal rights, and actually, to be honest, people say, "Well, we do human rights." Yeah, we have a lot, but I mean, nobody looks out for the animals, and that's my department. Anyway.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm not a big fan. Like everybody else looks out for.
My point was the World Wildlife Foundation was spending donation money
No,
to go
no,
there.
those things are
They weren't doing anything.
the World Wildlife Foundation. Now, this is interesting because my girlfriend at university is now a board member of the World Wide, and she's a news presenter. She's a news presenter out of Toronto, and she's like, "So Felix, why are you? People know that we were together at university, and you're hurting my career." But it's like, yeah, you know what? Fuck you. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. So she's like, wait, no, I'm an important person, and you're not. And it's like, go away. And I don't think those people care about animals, because
they don't. They don't care at all. No.
How many of them have broken? I've got like animals with broken legs, broken wings, running around my house, and I take care of them. And how many of those people have that? They don't. They go to these parties, as I absolutely know for a fact, because I've been to them. They go to these parties where everyone sits there with martinis and talks about how great they are helping the world. And what do? They do.
Well, you brought up a very good topic that I wanted to touch on. That is, people talk, but they don't do anything. And with that in mind, we talk a lot about the world and how things have gotten really bad, America's over, and so on. But it's really, we should be, most of our effort, time, and mental effort as well, and energy should be spent on building the next. I
agree. What's coming next? I agree.
And that's what I want to do with you guys. You know what I'm saying? We have these discussions. I'd like to see us. There's communication. There's education. There's agriculture. There's energy.
Yeah, I agree.
All kinds of stuff. The world is waiting for us. We need to rebuild everything. The educational system is completely gone. We need to rebuild it from the ground up. Our medical system, same thing. And I've been working on the electrical side. And what I see in the electrical system, people don't understand electricity for the most part. Therefore, that's why I got into that bent, and why I wrote that book, because I see all the crazy nonsense that's going on in just simple, basic energy production that most people can't see. So that's the reason for that book. But every single part of our society has to be rebuilt from the ground up.
By the way, Nathan, you're going to be putting his links in the description, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
All right. So.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And then, but I think Japan is really good for us for two reasons. One, they can go back to the Edo period. They could rediscover themselves and quickly and instant go back to the Edo period of self-resilience, I think. And number two, us foreigners can do it, and they'll follow us. That's amazing.
Yeah, can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because this is a conversation you and I have already had. About foreigners in Japan, and they might follow us. I think Nathan's audience might be interested in that.
Yes.
Well,
please.
For a regular Japanese person, if you do something new, let's say you business, or you want to try get an education, go in a new field, and let's say you fail, because that's how we learn, right? But not in Japan. If you start a business and you fail, that's it. You had your one chance. You told everyone this is what you're going to do or what you're going to be. Well, you're a liar. You're an idiot. You're a fool. You're a degenerate. You're a failure. So when a foreigner comes here, you can do the same thing, but they'll give you the rope and they'll say, well, you can fail. We're going to expect you to, but you may well lead us out. I mean, you may well succeed, and you've got a great idea. We're all going to copy you. You've heard the story how when MacArthur came in was it the Emperor of Japan told everyone, okay, the war's over. Don't fight the Americans. And suddenly everyone put down their weapons, and they're going to fight to the last man, baby, and woman, last woman and child, right?
Yeah.
At the end of World War II. But just like that, in like 30 seconds, they flipped, right?
Yeah.
They can do that. They can do if someone comes up with a model community.
No,
like
that's actually something. That's actually something I would like to interject on, because the Japanese, as far as my understanding, they're not people that can take incremental changes, but once they realize, okay, this is not working, they can flip on a dime. Does that?
Yeah.
Would that agree with what you were just saying?
Yeah, they'll accept incremental changes if it's brought to you by Mitsubishi, Honda, Toshiba, Sony.
But yeah.
But a big change requires a black ship from America, or an atom bomb from America,
I've been to it was Shimoda. I've been to, and the weirdest part about the black ship, what he was talking about, what Marvin talks about is the black ship was it was a ship that came from the United States, a steamer, and it was piloted by a guy named Matthew Perry, and it hit a place called Shimoda, and that they basically forced Japan to open up to trade, and they actually have a bust of the guy there. Not even joking. They literally have a bust of the guy there. Of Perry. Yeah, they got a bust of him at the marina. At the marina, they have a literal bust of this guy who's like, open up, we're not taking no for answer. And now they've got a bust of the guy at the marina that he did that in. That was like, what, about 150
I really think
like
that, even in my case, on the island where I am, any foreigner does anything, there's a newspaper reporter would love to do a newspaper story or a TV report on them. Like I mentioned, my musician friend, he's been subject of Tokyo. We're far away from but Tokyo television news. He's been subject of. And same with my Australian friend. He's an interesting guy. He's on the news. And I could do the same thing, but I'm holding my ammunition until I have something really, really good.
Okay, sounds good.
But it's easy for us to get a newspaper. When I was working as a scientist, in the bubble time, one of the major newspapers interviewed me and had an article on it, for example. But it's easy for us to get attention. And what I like to see, and I think this is possible, a community, a model community. This is how we can and should be living in the future.
Actually, can you explain that? Can you explain that to Nathan's viewers? Because you and I have talked about this, and I don't think you've actually communicated it succinctly. Can you adequately, and can you do it in let's say 2 minutes? Can you
well, when I was talking to you, I was mentioning that in like where I am, there's empty farms.
Not to me, to Nathan's viewers though. Nathan's viewers.
Well, there's empty farms, there's empty islands. In my town, there's a whole plateau that's been cut away. You could put a whole community up there. The way things are in Japan and the respect they have, if you have a group of people who ostensibly are well educated and can work hard, I think you can convince the government to allow a group of, let's say, 100 people to create a model community. I don't see why I really think you can do that. The Japanese, when I first came to my island, other people told me, why don't you bring some more foreigners and start a little community here, and we'll make it a tourist attraction. We'll all speak English, and you're going to make a community where you do everything. We'll call it American Community or whatever. There's already people talking about doing that. I don't know what else to say.
Does that interest you, though?
Really respect their ability, their humbleness to follow.
Would you
a good idea?
Marvin, would you actually want to turn it into that sort of thing, like Little Foreigner Town?
I don't like that, but what I like is not important. Even like I'm building a resort now, right? A refuge. And every decision I make is not, I always ask other people, what do other people want to see? A lot of stuff I do is unpleasant, but I'm putting in a wheelchair bathroom. I don't like that. But I'll get a whole group, a lot of people who are wheelchair bound that want to visit the ocean side. They have no place to go. So I'm doing that. So yeah, I could see just gathering people together, and if there's money, it could be done. It could be done pretty easily if there's money. And that's a fast way to do it. Time, talent, money, the three factors. We're working on it slowly because we don't have much of anything. But I'm building, as I mentioned before, a farm attached to a hostel, a 10-bed hostel, which is also a campground, and I have money to put in a 2-story deck with a big tree in the middle of it. This is all on the beach, right next to the beach. I want to make like a nightclub atmosphere there for the nighttime, and it's all sustainable. It's all our own energy, all our own water. We're trying to do the best we can with food. A lot of our food comes from around the area. This is the future, and we are trying to make example of it. It's going very slow. I won't get much done, but that's what I'm working on. But again, when someone I have an advantage. I have a PhD. I work for a large corporation, and so they respected me from the outset. But now that I've been doing stuff, I get a little bit more respect. It's easier for me to get the attention of the city fathers, if you will.
That's pretty cool.
And we also, we have a little nucleus of foreigners here already, and we can get more. And you can get large tracts of land in Japan, really beautiful land for very low cost.
Hey, so we are getting close to 2 hours, and I was hoping we could close up with, I wanted to ask both of you, Japan sounds like a really good place to be a foreigner right now, and I'm even considering maybe headed over there myself. If I want to get out of the States for a bit, that sounds like a good place to be, just from what you guys are all saying. But if you are a foreigner and you want to go to Japan and you don't want to teach English, what advice would you give?
Well, do you want to go, Marvin, or me first?
Go ahead.
The thing is that you should never. One of the things about anything post-Western, okay, we have to put this into a box. Our societies are now basically high tax and high spending for welfare, right? So, I have a lot of friends of mine that are moving down to Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile, as weird as that sounds. And the reason is because the taxes are low and you don't have to pay for people being idle. So one of the oldest adages of the devil will find work for idle hands to do. Right? East Asia is exactly the same thing. They have welfare for mentally and physically handicapped people and the elderly, but if you're physically able to work, there is absolutely no welfare for you here. All right, there's nothing.
Especially a foreigner.
Especially as a foreigner.
Especially a foreigner. Yeah.
Especially you have got to basically earn your soul here, and this is not a place for people that think that they're going to come over and be idle and gain a check and play video games. It's not a place like that whatsoever. Would you agree with that?
Well, actually, my comment was very similar in that I was going to say, before coming here, get a skill. Don't come here without. Get a really good skill and polish it. Get a lot of experience. Call me. I'll tell you what kind of skills you're looking for. I found a job for airplane mechanic working for the local car garage. They both like racing cars, so it fits very well. We need all kinds of skills here.
Basically get a skill.
Become a good carpenter, saying, right? A good old-fashioned carpenter.
But don't come here thinking you can live off of the largesse.
No, you need to get a skill before coming here.
And you can't live here on the largesse or the welfare. You can't come here to play video games. And that's all I was trying to say. So I didn't mean to cut you off, dude. Sorry.
No. there is a special visa program for people who want to farm, but only for certain Southeast Asian countries. I forget which ones offhand. I don't know, Vietnam, places like that. There's special visas to come here to be farmers. As far as Westerners, I think most Westerners would never fit here. At least most Americans. I've had about 40 Westerners visit to work with me that were from the Workaway program, and I was careful to pick really good people. It's very interesting to see the variety, and the people that are the best. Well, people from Eastern Europe were great. Anyone who's willing to, who can think and put stuff together. To me, a farmer and engineer have the same mindset. You solve three-dimensional problems. If you're that kind of person, maybe you don't have a degree, but you like to repair your own car. You like to build stuff. Get a skill that you can, that looks good on paper. Like I was, you don't have to have a degree, but let's say I was the engineer at this company, and then come here with that.
Actually, I can interject on that. Actually,
yeah.
You can also I probably shouldn't say this, but I've used Photoshop to multiply a bunch of different people with their quote degrees and closed quote degrees because they had skills and they've lived here for a while. So
now hold on a second. That wasn't you. That was your friend, right?
That was a friend of mine. It's a guy I heard of. It wasn't me. It was a guy I heard of. And
probably a Chinese guy.
There's a Chinese guy, and he was nefarious. He was nefarious. It wasn't me, but sorry. Silence. Sorry, my pigeons are silence.
All right, guys. Well, it's been a couple hours. Anything you want to plug before we go off the air?
I don't need to plug anything. I actually think Marvin should plug his stuff, though.
Well, my website gives you a little insight. If you're serious about coming to Japan and you haven't been here before, I'm talking to your readers or watchers. You want to make contact with a place where you can come, maybe spend a couple weeks working here with me, and we'll give you food and board, lodging, and you have some fun on the beach, especially in the summertime. There's canoeing and swimming and stuff.
Actually, like Japan Beach in the summer is awesome. Not gonna lie,
it really is, and we're very
really
clean.
It's awesome.
We have oysters and you just eat them. Yugeshima.com. Yugeshima.com is YUGESHIMA. Yugeshima.com. That's the name of our island, and that's a good contact. You can see what we're doing there.
Also, I think Nathan's going to put your links in the description as well.
Yeah, I'll get the
I have lots
link.
of lodging. I have lots of. I built a guest house, and I got lots of places for people to stay. If you work, we're doing Workaway where they work for 20 hours a week, and we would give them lodging and food, and then I have a motorbike they can ride around, that kind of thing.
It's interesting you say that because I had this conversation, and this is going to go out to a friend of mine, an Irish friend of mine, and it's the movie called The New World by Tariq. I can't remember his name, but it was a movie in 2005, I think, and it was talking about the establishment of Jamestown, the first settlement in the United States, and the captain of the settlement, he's Christopher Plummer, the guy. He was Captain Von Trapp in The Sound of Music. I mean, he's a great. He's a everybody loves him. And he said, if you don't work, you don't eat. And that's actually, to be honest, if you've got the ability to work and you don't, and you're lazy, if you don't work, you don't eat. Anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
It's all good.
Well, that's a Japanese ethos, isn't it?
Well, it's also an American ethos prior to 1965. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think we could wrap it up. Marvin, I couldn't pull your site up just now, but I will put it in the description along with your book. And yeah, just let me know if there's anything else I can throw it in. Felix, I guess you don't want to plug your show or your channel, but I got
it. It doesn't matter. My show, it loses like tens of thousands of I've lost like I think 10,000 subs. It doesn't matter. It's fine. I'm Black Pigeon. I'm Felix Rex. It doesn't matter. I'm basically targeted for extinction. It doesn't matter. Whatever.
I think my brother turned me onto your channel. It's probably like 4 years ago or so. It was a while back.
But... they're both targeted for extinction. It doesn't matter.
All right. Well, on that note, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.